Hello and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're watching this. My name is Beeson Wilkes, and we haven't had a chance to meet. I'm actually a Veeam technical trainer here at Veeam Software. Just want to give you that warm welcome to Veeam Software. Now, there's a lot going on. You may have been looking at the past 24, 48 hours of training going, holy cow, Veeam does a lot. And whether you've been here for a day or 10 years, that statement still rings true. But if we look at the Veeam platform, those 5 key aspects really kind of hone in on the different environments that we take care of and that we protect. The first one being those cloud environments. Now, this is one of the newer ones, and we can talk more about this in a later video, but the cloud environments are things like AWS, Google, Azure. The list, in a way, kind of goes on depending on how you look at it. But Veeam does a really great job of protecting those cloud environments. Another one is your SaaS, or your software as a service. This software as a service, one of the most common ones that you'll hear of, are things like Office 365. Again, a component that we'll look at here in future videos. Now, the next 3 are really, I wouldn't say crucial, but ones that really highlight Veeam's capabilities. Now, the first one really being things like your virtual environment and your physical environment. Now, in terms of physical and virtual, a key component there are your applications. Right? So one of the headlining ones are our ability to protect those various applications that our customers rely on in order to maintain business continuity. So beyond just those applications, you have things like virtual machines, as mentioned, as well as physical machines. So we'll just kind of give these a quick headliners, and at this point, this may kind of look a little familiar to what you saw in some previous slides. So, of course, we have those virtual environments, which, by the way, if you roll the clock back, it's really where Veeam got their precedence, right? Is being able to protect those virtual environments. So we have our 5 key components, and I think really in this video we want to focus on these key 3 attributes. Now, there's a big asterisk here. When we look at things like physical and applications, and even virtual in a way. Depends on what kind of environment. So, full disclosure, you may hear the terminology, it depends. This is a good indicator of that, right? So let's kind of paint a picture around what this looks like. So typically, on a day-to-day basis or a company's basis, you'll have something like a data center. So a data center does a multitude of things. So it could be supporting websites or, marketing teams. The list goes on. Really had a hard time struggling and figuring out what examples I wanted to give there. But if we look at this from a Veeam perspective, we have the ability to protect basically any type of workload that's in this environment. Well, what kind of workloads are there? A lot. Right, so if we kind of dial this out, we have things like virtual machines. You'll commonly see this, signature as VMs. We could have physical machines. These physical machines could be hosting key applications that require that business to maintain productivity, be profitable. On top of that, you may have different applications, as well as file shares, or we'll go ahead and call that a NAS. Now, there's a lot of dialogue around network attached storage, or NAS. It could be production, we see here in the data center, or it could be used as a repository. I'm going to dive into that because Veeam backup and replication commonly gets construed as backup and replication. Well, it's typically the same thing. Well, in Veeam terminology, it's not. It plays 2 different cards there. So let's take this for example, right? We have a data center. Let's go ahead and mimic that guy. Give another data center right over here. All right, call this D2. Not to be confused with maybe Mighty Ducks there. But the reason we want to draw 2 of these, a lot of companies have like an off-site location. And that's where the Veeam backup and replication comes into play. Because let's bring in a little bit of Veeam here, right? And now Veeam, I'm just going to put Veeam in the center here. More specifically, VBR. Oops. Which is Veeam backup and replication. Now, Veeam backup and replication will take care of a multitude of aspects. Now, let's call this production. This production site has virtual machines. These VMs have different applications. These applications, by the way, may be things like Exchange, SQL, Active Directory, honestly, Oracle, the list goes on, right? There's a lot of different applications that companies really utilize and depend on, and we can protect those, like protect them. But from a recovery standpoint, I think that's really conversation starts off. Now, of course, we have these virtual machines that require protection, and that's where Veeam comes in, right? We can take these virtual machines and only back them up and send them to any type of repository. Again, I really want to fight myself to go into some further dialogue here, but a backup is essentially taking that production data, compressing it, deduping it, making it smaller, and gives us the ability to retain that for a longer period of time. And longer being subjective, right, depending on, or objective, depending on how you look at it, right? So it could be years, months, depending on what your needs are. But this is, again, built for retention, built for long-term keeping. Now, these backups could be sent locally, which, by the way, we can go to local first, and then we can send it off to the cloud, or we can replicate those. Naturally, where that replication comes into play. So if we were to replicate those, we can take those same virtual machines, send them all the way to that second site, and put them on a host, right? These are what we call cold spares, you may hear. Now, these can be powered on at any point in time, and these are legitimately full-blown copies of those production virtual machines. It's almost like being a power button on a physical machine to, again, reinstate those services. Now, that's where the backup and replication comes into play. And this is just scratching the surface, but some of the key elements here is that we are that software-defined solution, so complete software that allows us to integrate with basically any type of environment, whether that's VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix, and even kind of foreshadowing on some of those cloud environments. On top of that, we're also the ability to write to any type of disk. So since we're software-based and storage agnostic, whether you have local disk, network-attached storage, maybe you've invested in some really nice production hardware that we can integrate with and capitalize on that. Well, it gives you an immense amount of freedom and flexibility on where you want to land those backups. So I'm big on that flexibility. So lastly, now the part is about coverability. It's one thing to back stuff up. It's kind of like your life insurance. Now, in the event that you need to perhaps use these backups for item recoveries, application recoveries, or even full-blown DR, disaster recovery, we can take care of that. So from a recovery standpoint, we have you covered in more than one way. So with that said, this really takes care of Veeam backup and replication, but bear in mind that that's only 50% of that flagship product, our Veeam Availability Suite. Veeam One will actually take those different jobs and environments that we've asked to back up and protect and give you some incredible analytics and reporting that really aren't presented in the most consumable fashion. So we'll see you in that next video. So stay tuned again. There's a lot going on, but we're just getting started talking about the virtual, physical, and that application layer. In the next video, we'll dive deeper into that physical aspect with our agents, and even dive into things like our cloud and Office 365 protection, even things like SharePoint, which is on the horizon. We'll see you soon.